Self-love is the new sexy, the podcast devoted to helping you overcome life's most painful and stubborn challenges so you can feel great, have more energy, and live stress-free every day. To reach your full potential, simply work with the powerful spiritual principles that are readily accessible to everyone. It's easier than you think, and on today's show, W. Mark Watts is going to show you how starting with self-love is the key to joyously and harmoniously making that happen.
Hey everybody, this is W. Mark Watts. I want to say hello, welcome, and thank you to everyone for hanging out with me for another episode of Self-Love is the New Sexy. And in today's episode, I want to talk about surrendering our perception of perfection and our pursuit of perfection. If you've listened to very many of my episodes, you know that what I'm really after here with this podcast is all about offering new ways to think about life, to think about especially those big topics that seem to affect us more than others. And I know for me, perfection is one of those that has oftentimes hindered me, or at least made me feel bad. And of course, we don't want to feel bad. We want to feel good, right? That's the goal, is to feel good as often and as long and as exaggeratedly happy as we possibly can. That's always the goal, because we can live in that space. But what I learned over time is that I would use this idea of perfection, and I'm not even sure where I got it from. I'm sure I got it from the environment, from watching TV, from maybe coaches, because I've played sports all of my life, and friends, kind of putting the pressure on it, and maybe even school, having to get that 100 instead of a 97 or 98. Always wanting to get the very best, have the very best, and be the very best at everything. You start to adopt that idea that perfection is the goal. And when I look back over my life, I realize that there have been many times when I've been upset only simply because whatever I was involved in or whatever I was doing, I didn't feel the best, or I didn't feel good because I didn't get that perfect grade, or I didn't have the perfect body, or I didn't have the perfect relationship, or what I thought was the perfect amount of money, on and on and on. And you can see how that can snowball in your life, and because you can apply it to any aspect of our lives in terms of what we think we deserve, or what we think we should have, or what we think is acceptable in society, or by people we care about, by teachers, by peers, etc., co-workers, you name it. And what I found is once I started to reshape the way that I looked at perfection, then I started to really feel a lot better more consistently. And I didn't feel necessarily that pressure. I took a lot of pressure off myself that I created. No one else created that pressure. I was the person that created that space that I wanted to try and feel that I could never feel. You hear what I'm saying? Oftentimes we are the ones that create the prison. We create the trouble. We create the issues. No one else actually does this. We adopt this mentality that we make it difficult for ourselves to be happy with who we are. And so once I understood that and I made that shift, and I said, you know what? If this idea of perfection seems to hinder me, seems to rattle me, seems to upset me over and over again, then do I really need this in my life? And then the light bulb went off. No, not really, because when you think about it, and when I thought about it, I'm like, what does perfection get me? What does the idea of being perfect get me? And I looked back over my life and I realized that it didn't get me very much at all. Nothing but heartache. And when I realized that, I'm like, wow, if I've created this monster myself, then the good part about it is I can get rid of the monster as well. So what did I do? And what I invite you to do is eliminate the thought of perfection in your life. You know, if it's an issue, or even if it's a part of your world or a part of anyone's world who's close to you, you know, invite yourself to just disregard the whole concept of perfection. You know, there's really no such thing as perfection. And it's not that big a deal. It's something that we've made this huge goal to achieve, this whole thought process, because it's just a thought. It's just something we created that to make us feel good. So that if we create this lofty goal or create this image and we feel like we've reached it, then we can feel good with who we are. When actually the opposite is true. You're already wonderful. You already have everything. You already reached the goals. Every goal that you could possibly think about, you already are that. So you should feel good every day, all the time anyway. You don't have to create a situation that you now need to go try and achieve, so that then once you do that, you can feel good. Does that make sense? So once I took away that trying to be perfect, trying to have the perfect body, be the perfect weight, make the perfect grades, create a perfect project at work, be a perfect brother, a perfect dad. You know, that's a huge one. That is a real big one, because I was just thinking about that the other day, because, you know, we all, for those of you who are parents out there, and those of you who are yet to be parents, but will be in the future, you know, take my advice on this. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. There is no such thing as a perfect parent. And, you know, growing up with parents, being a parent, watching my friends, talking with them, there's no such thing. The only thing that you can be as a parent is you can give your best efforts, and everybody's different. Every, situation's different. And so if you try and create the perfect parent, I can tell you that is going to create all types of grief for you. So take my advice, or hear me if you have that thought in your head, or if you beat yourself up, because I've done that. I wanted to be the perfect dad. I wanted to make things so much better than maybe it was for me in certain situations. But no matter how hard I tried, I realized that, it didn't always turn out the way that I wanted it to turn out. And I had to be okay with that. And then once I became okay with it, my life got better. It just is what it is. And everybody's happy, everybody's good. So I didn't need to create, again, that extra pressure on myself to try and create a world that I think is perfect. Because here's the funny part. There's been numerous occasions when my son and I have talked way, after the fact. I would say when he's in his teenage years, and even now we talk about certain situations and things that I think weren't so perfect. For example, after our divorce, his mom and I divorced. The situation where her home was his primary home, but he did spend time with me, and he spent every summer with me. And he would go to these summer camps, and he would have a ball. But in my mind, I always felt that in some ways that wasn't good enough. I just felt like I was falling short. I felt like I wasn't giving him the support or providing the right opportunities, or I felt like I wasn't giving him all the opportunities to be happy. Well, that was all in my head and in my mind. Well, he's told me on several occasions that in his eyes, it was totally different. He sees those summers and those camps as so much fun. And he even recalls certain little things about them, like which city we were in and, certain activities he would do. And so he's asked me specifics about these places, and he looks at them. He had a ball. He had a blast. But in my mind, I'm thinking it's less than. So again, remove your perception. Surrender this whole idea of perfection. Allow life to be what it's going to be, because your perception is oftentimes very different from the others who are involved. So, and I invite you today, in giving up this perfection, replace that with performance. I prefer performance. So anytime that I still do this, I still want to be perfect on certain things. Anytime it becomes an issue for me, I just replace perfection with performance, because I have to prepare and then I have to perform. And then after I perform, as with any performance that you've ever witnessed, once it's over, it's over. You let it go. And then what do? You move on to whatever's next in line. You can't go back and do that performance again. And it's too difficult to beat yourself up over it, because you've got to perform again. Life goes on. And that next task, that next thing, that next joy is right around the corner. So you have to prepare for it and perform again. And let that whole concept of perfection go away. I don't know, again, who started that and why we think it's such a great idea and such the norm and the ideal, but it's not. It's actually something that we use to trap ourselves to make our life harder. And so we've got to let that go, because I work with people on a consistent basis who deal with that. And I've dealt with it. And again, it hasn't gone away from me. There's still moments where I want to be perfect on things. And I just have to remind myself, no such thing, my friend. There's no such thing. You're making it harder on yourself. And we agreed that we are not going to do that anymore. Yeah, I speak to myself in terms of me being a team. I just don't, I have no real connection anymore to wanting to be perfect. I do have a connection to doing my best and giving my best. And so I invite you to do the same. So surrender those thoughts of perfection. Identify any aspects of your life where you've made that the ideal, where it's become burdensome, where it's become tiresome, where it's become annoying, where it's where it's created negative energy in your life. Just let it go and replace it with performance, or whatever other word that makes you feel good, that feels light when you say it and when you invite it into your world. Because perfection doesn't exist, but giving your best performance absolutely does exist. That's all I have for you today, folks. Thanks for hanging out with me. Be sure and connect with me on social media if you feel so inclined. Wherever you find this podcast, please rate it, leave some notes so that other people who come across it will have an idea of what you think about the show. And it also gives me ideas of ways to improve it. And stay tuned. And I look forward to speaking with you all again very soon. Bye now.
You've been listening to Self-Love is the New Sexy with W. Mark Watts. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to tell a friend. Also, make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to our show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, or wherever you listen to podcasts.